Every 42 hours, someone in Florida is killed while riding a bicycle. Not in a race, not on a mountain trail. They were going to work. They were going to school. They were riding to the grocery store. They were just trying to get home. Killed on a public road, usually by a motor vehicle, often by a driver looking at a phone instead of the road. By the time you finished listening to this episode, somewhere in Florida, another cyclist will have been hit. And before this day ends, another family may get a phone call that changes their life forever. I'm Richardt Garrett, and this is the Florida Bicycle Association podcast. A look at why Florida has become the deadliest state in America for people on bicycles, and what it will take to change it. Let's begin with the facts, because the facts are staggering. In 2025, 207 people were killed riding bicycles in Florida. Almost 10,000 others were injured in reported crashes, and many crashes are never reported at all. That means on the average, 18 people or more per day are struck while riding a bicycle in this state. And again, these are just the numbers reported by law enforcement. Far too many go unreported. Florida doesn't just lead the nation in total cyclist deaths. We lead on a per capita basis as well. Worse than California, worse than Texas, states with much larger populations and far more cyclists. And the trend is moving in the wrong direction. The League of American Bicyclists found Florida's cycling fatality rate increased 38% when comparing 2014 through 2018 with 2019 to 2023. Think about that, a 38% increase. This is not bad luck. It is not random, and it is not inevitable. This is policy failure, an infrastructure failure, a cultural failure. And today we're going to talk about how Florida got here and what we can do to stop it. There are 5 major reasons cyclists are dying at these rates in Florida. None of them are mysteries. We know exactly what the problems are. What's missing is the political will to fix them. First, distracted driving. Florida still does not have a true hands-free driving law. In much of the state, drivers can legally hold and operate a phone behind the wheel, as long as they are not technically texting. In 2025, the Florida Senate passed a hands-free bill by a vote of 37 to 9. 37 to 9. The bill existed because people, including cyclists, were being killed by distracted drivers. And then the Florida House never brought it to a vote. It simply died. Meanwhile, cyclists keep dying too. Second, laws without enforcement. Florida's street foot passing law has existed since 2006. Drivers are legally required to give at least 3 feet of clearance when passing. In all of 2024, only 130 citations were issued statewide for violating that law. 130 in a state with hundreds of cyclist deaths and thousands of injuries. A law that is never enforced stops becoming a law and becomes a suggestion. Third, roads engineered for speed instead of safety. Much of Florida was designed in the middle of the 20th century around one assumption. Everyone drives, so we built wide, high-speed arterial roads with multiple lanes, long sight lines, and almost no physical protection for vulnerable road users. The result is predictable. At 35 miles an hour, a cyclist struck by a vehicle often survives. At 45 miles an hour, the crash frequently is fatal. And 45 miles an hour is the normal speed limit on most Florida roads where cyclists are expected to ride. Paint is not protection. Physics always wins. Fourth, tourism and explosive growth. Florida sees roughly 140 million visitors every year. We also have one of the fastest growing populations in the country. That means millions of drivers navigating unfamiliar roads, unfamiliar intersections, and often unfamiliar bicycle laws. Good infrastructure compensates for human error. Bad infrastructure magnifies it. And fifth, a culture of impunity. Most often, drivers who seriously injure or kill cyclists face minimal consequences. No accountability means no deterrence, and no deterrence means the behavior continues. Let's spend a minute on the human cost. Behind every statistic is a person, a family, a friend, a neighbor, a future that disappeared in seconds. People like Nikki Isaac, Patrick Franklin, professional triathlete Gabrielle Server, Craig Prather, and thousands of others whose names never make it to the headlines outside of their local communities. Tampa cycling attorney Steele Olmstead, who has represented injured cyclists and grieving families for years, said it plainly. The 3-foot rule is not the 3-foot rule, because if the law is never enforced, it does not protect anyone. At a recent mobility summit in Boca Raton, one transportation engineer made another point that cuts to the heart of the crisis. Paint is not infrastructure. A stripe of white paint does not stop a 2-ton SUV, especially when the driver is looking at a screen instead of the road ahead. And when researchers ask Floridians why they don't ride bicycles more often, the number one answer is simple: fear. Not weather, not distance, not hills, just fear. And given the conditions on many Florida roads, that fear is entirely rational. So what has to change? Now, there's the important part. This problem is solvable. Other states have reduced cyclist fatalities. Other countries have reduced them dramatically. Even parts of Florida are beginning to prove that safer design works. But meaningful change requires action. First, Florida needs a true hands-free driving law. 30 states already have one. The Florida Senate already passed it. The House needs to stop blocking it. This is one of the fastest, simplest safety improvements that can be made in Florida. Eyes on the road save lives. Second, the 3-foot passing rule must be enforced. That means targeted enforcement operations, high visibility campaigns, and new technologies that can measure unsafe passing distances. 130 citations a year is not enforcement, it's theater. Third, we need real infrastructure, protected bike lane, concrete separation, traffic calming, road diets on dangerous arterials, safer intersections, not paint, protection. And these improvements cannot depend entirely on local governments scraping together funds to protect project by project. The state must have cyclist safety as part of Florida's transportation standards. Fourth, driver education needs to include bicycle laws. Every driver should understand cyclists have legal rights. Cyclists are vulnerable, and a moment of distraction in a car can become a lifetime of consequences. And finally, accountability matters. When someone kills a cyclist while driving, distracted, reckless, or impaired, the legal consequences should reflect the severity of that decision. Because right now, too often they do not. Florida should be one of the best places in the world to ride a bicycle. We have flat terrain, year-round riding weather, and millions of residents who want safer, healthier ways to move around their community. But instead, Florida has become synonymous with danger for cyclists. Every 42 hours, another life is lost. Every single day, more riders are injured. These are not statistics. They are human beings, and they deserve better than the transportation system we have built around them. The Florida Bicycle Association is fighting to change on every one of these issues. If you believe people should be able to ride a bicycle without risking their lives, and get involved. Visit Florida Bicycle Association, contact your state legislatures, demand a hands-free driving law, demand meaningful enforcement, demand infrastructure that protects human life instead of maximizing vehicle speed, because it's the gap between the Florida we have now and the Florida we could become is not technology. It's whether enough people decide that this level of death is unacceptable. I'm Richard Garrett for the Florida Bicycle Association. Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the next episode.